So, ngayon naman ay i-introduce natin yung konsepto ng one-to-one functions at yung inverse ng isang one-to-one function. So, kailan nga ba one-to-one ang isang function? So, a function is one-to-one if for any two distinct values of x or values in its domain, a and b in its domain. I hope you still remember this notation. This means a and b are elements of the domain of f. Okay. So, a and b are distinct here. So, if a and b are distinct, dapat yung value ng function dun sa a and b distinct din. So, if that is true for every pair of distinct elements in the domain, then the function is one-to-one. Okay. Later on, we'll have an example of a one-to-one function. Now, graphically, what does that mean? Okay. Let me draw an example here. So again, kapag magkaiba yung values ng a and b, dapat yung f of a hindi rin equal sa f of b. So, hanap tayo ng magkaibang values ng a at b. For example, ito yung a. Ito naman yung b. So, obviously, magkaiba sila since magkaiba yung location nila dun sa x-axis. So, kung ito yung f of a, yeah. So, kung nandito yung f of a, hindi pwedeng nandito yung f of b. So, dapat, it's somewhere else. Pwedeng dito. Yeah. Yeah. So, hindi pwedeng nandito. Yan. Otherwise, if f of b is also here, then it will be equal to f of a. Now, we actually have a test. Okay, we have a graphical test for verifying whether a function is one-to-one. And that is called the horizontal line test. Sulat natin, horizontal line test. Okay. So, according to the horizontal line test, dapat, if you draw any horizontal lines, it should intersect the function at most one point. Oops, hindi siya horizontal. Ito na lang. Ayan. Okay. So, we avoided this particular horizontal line intersecting the function at 2 points because we restricted that yung value ng f of b dapat iba sa value ng f of a. Okay. So, don't confuse this with the vertical line test. Yung vertical line test, ginagamit natin para matest kung yung graph ay graph nga ng isang function. Pero yung horizontal line test naman, ginagamit natin to test if a function, so function na siya, pero gusto nating i-test kung one-to-one. So as you can see, this function is one-to-one because every horizontal line will cross the function in at most 1 point. Ano ngayon ang itsura ng function na hindi one-to-one? For example, meron akong ganitong function. Ayan. And I'm going to draw a horizontal line. For example, this. Ayun. Tumama na siya. Dun sa maraming points. Dito, 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 and dito. Itong mga points na to, kung ano man yung values ng x dyan, yung value ng f of x, magkakaparehas lang din. So, therefore, hindi ito one-to-one. Now, let's look at these examples. Okay, so kung alam natin yung graph ng function, we can argue whether it is one-to-one based on the graph alone. Okay, non-constant and constant linear function. So kung non-constant linear function, it is equal to f of x, which is equal to mx plus b, where m is not 0. Kung constant naman, it's just equal to f of x equals b. Okay. Kung hindi 0 yung slope natin, then hindi horizontal yung graph nung linear function. So, pwedeng ganyan, pwedeng ganyan. Ayan. As long as hindi siya horizontal. At dahil hindi horizontal, it will pass the horizontal line test. Ayan. So, therefore, kung non-constant yung linear function natin, it is 1 to 1. Okay, so 1 to 1 ito. You can also write 1 to 1 this way. Ngayon, kung constant naman yung linear function natin, ano nga ba ang graph ng isang constant function? F of x equals b. Well, this is just the line, the horizontal line, y equals b. And that line itself will not pass the horizontal line test. Because if you do a horizontal line, and it coincides with the function, with the graph itself, it will intersect at every point on that line. So this is not 1 to 1. Quadratic function, this should be a little bit more obvious. Alam natin na yung graph ng quadratic function is a parabola, pwedeng naka-open pataas, naka-open pababa. But regardless, it will not pass the horizontal line test. Ayan. So this is not 1 to 1. Okay. How about the floor, ceiling, and sine functions? Itong floor and ceiling and sine functions, lahat sila may flat portions dun sa graph nila. Okay? May mga horizontal na line segment portions. So therefore, itong tatlong ito, hindi ito 1 to 1. So not 1 to 1. Natingnan naman natin itong f of x equals x cubed plus 2. Okay. So suppose hindi natin alam yung graph niya. How do we verify kung 1 to 1 siya or hindi? Okay. So ito yung condition for 1 to 1. Kapag hindi equal ang a and b, dapat hindi rin equal ang f of a tsaka f of b. Okay. So, to show algebraically na ang isang function which is given by some formula is not 1 to 1, here's what you have to do. Okay? Okay. So first, you're going to assume that a is not equal to b. That's the first assumption. But f of a is equal to f of b. Ang gusto natin, hindi ito equal. Okay. Pero, let's assume na equal sila. Ayan. Now, dapat, kapag inassume natin na equal sila, equal din dapat yung a and b. But this will contradict our assumption on a and b not being equal. And this is actually called proof by contradiction. So how do you prove something by contradiction? You're going to assume something which is contrary to the conclusion that you want. Ano yung conclusion na gusto natin? F of A is not equal to F of B. So we're going to assume otherwise. So ano yung kabaligtaran ng F of A is not equal to F of B? Well, of course, it's just F of A is equal to B. Now, in the process of making this assumption, dapat makontradict natin yung isa pang assumption natin. In this case, A is not equal to B. Okay. So, let's do that. So, suppose A is not equal to B, but F of A is equal to F of B. So again, we're using proof by contradiction. Kaya, inassume natin na f of A is equal to f of B. And then gusto nating maka-arrive sa isang contradiction on the first assumption. A is not equal to B. Okay. So what is f of A? It's just A cubed plus 2. And what is f of B? It's just B cubed plus 2. Now, I can cancel 2. I will get A cubed is equal to B cubed. Okay. And then I can get the square, sorry, not the square root, but the cube root of both sides. Cube root of both sides. And then I get A equals B. And what is this? This is a contradiction to the assumption that we made earlier. Now, since A is equal to B, it must be na hindi totoo ito. Itong part na to. So, therefore, f of A. So, therefore, f of A is not equal to f of B. And therefore, and finally, yung conclusion natin is that f is actually 1-to-1. So, this is a 1-to-1 function. Okay. Let's try using this argument to show na ang isang non-constant linear function ay 1-to-1 without using the horizontal line test. So, show that f of x equals mx plus b, where m is not equal to 0, is 1-to-1. So again, gusto kong gamitin ulit itong proof by contradiction because this could be new to some of you. So ano nga, you know what, let me, because meron tayong b na ginagamit dito, so I would have to use different values for the test values of x. Okay, meron tayong ginamit na b din dito. Let me use c and d. So suppose c is not equal to d, and or but, and f of c is equal to f of d. So, kailangan, after making this assumption, dapat makontradict natin itong fact na, not fact, but itong assumption na c is not equal to d. Yeah. We should arrive at c equals d. Okay, so gawin natin yun. So what is f of c? That's just mc plus b. And f of d is just md plus b. Pwede natin i-cancel yung b. Meron akong mc equals md. Now, since m is not equal to 0, pwede nating i-divide yung both sides ng m. And you will just get c equals d. And this is now the contradiction. It contradicts the assumption that c is not equal to d. So therefore, f of c is not equal to f of d, and thus f of x, which is equal to mx plus b, is 1-to-1. Okay. Now, let's look at the concept of the inverse of a function. So, the inverse of a function is the function such that for every x in the domain, we have this relationship. Y is equal to f of x if and only if x is equal to f inverse of y. So, itong inverse ng function, we denote that by this. Itong -1 dito, that's not an exponent. This negative 1 here denotes the inverse. So we have this relationship, y is equal to f of x if and only if x is equal to f inverse of y. So let's look at some examples. If I have y is equal to let's say 2x, and the inverse, so ito yung f of x ko, then the inverse of f of x is equal to x over 2. In the later slides, I will give you the steps for finding the inverse. Okay. So f of x is equal to 2x, and then my inverse is x over 2. Okay, so if f inverse is equal to x over 2, then f inverse of y is equal to y over 2. Ayan. Now, another way of looking at this is this way. Suppose I have f of x equals 2x, and then my inverse is f inverse of x, which is equal to x over 2. Okay. Admittedly, medyo weird ito kasi yung y, which is our independent variable, siya na ngayon yung nasa loob nung inverse. Okay. But let's look at it this way. So f of x is equal to 2x, f inverse of x is equal to x over 2. So ang ginagawa ng f inverse is inaanundo niya yung ginawa nung f of x dun sa x. So dito, anong ginawa nung f of x? Minultiply niya yung x by 2. Dinoble niya ngayon yung value ng x. So ang dapat gawin ng f inverse, kailangan niyang hatiin or i-divide by 2. Okay. So for example, if x equals, let's say, 1, f of 1 is equal to 2, and f inverse of 2 is equal to 1. Okay. So f of 1 is equal to 2. Now, if we apply the inverse to 2, dapat ma-recover natin yung original na value ng x. Kasi yun yung trabaho ng f inverse. I-reverse niya yung ginawa ni f. Okay. So f of 1 equals 2, f inverse of 2 is equal to 1, f of 5 is equal to 10, and f inverse of 10 is equal to 10 over 2, which is equal to 5. Now, you're probably familiar with trigonometric functions. Okay. May mga inverse din tayong na-define on those functions. So, halimbawa, sine of x. Yung notation natin for the inverse of sine is sine inverse, or sometimes you can use arc sine. Okay? So, ito yung function, ito yung inverse niya. Now, let's show that we can have this observation with the sine function. Okay, I'm going to replace x here by, let's say, pi over 4, or maybe pi over 2. So sine of pi over 2 is equal to 1, and sine inverse of 1 is equal to pi over 2. Now, dahil meron tayong ganitong relationship, what do you think happens if I compose f and its inverse? What is f of f inverse? Okay. So I want you to pause the video and then think of the answer. Okay? So, ang value ng f of f inverse, okay, kapag in-evaluate natin siya sa x, okay, so again, may ginagawang something itong si f dun sa x. Ang gagawin naman ni f inverse, i-reverse niya. So same thing, kapag may ginawang something si f inverse, i-reverse din siya ni f. So x lang to actually. Similarly, ayun, f inverse of f is f inverse of f evaluated at x is also equal to x. Now, in terms of the domain and range, let's write that as a remark. Ang nangyayari, kapag kinuha natin yung inverse, nagsiswitch lang yung domain at range ng f tsaka ng inverse niya. Yung domain ng f is equal to the range of f inverse, and the domain of f inverse is equal to the range of f. Ngayon, anong gamit nitong dalawang relations na to? Minsan, madaling kunin yung domain, pero yung range, hindi siya ganong obvious. So, ang gagawin natin, kung gusto nating malaman yung range ng f, hanapin natin yung f inverse, and then hanapin natin yung domain niya. Yung domain ng f inverse ngayon, yung magiging range ng f. And now, here are the steps for finding the inverse. So I have a given function f of x. First, I will write that as y equals f of x. We can look at this as step 0. Just write y equals f of x. And then, step 1, switch x and y. So when you do that, you will get x equals f of y. So from here, you will get here. And so you have x equals some expression in y. So ang gagawin nyo ngayon sa step 2, you need to solve for solve for y rather in terms of x. Kung ano man yung expression na nakuha nyo in terms of x, yun na ngayon yung inverse ng f. Okay, let's look at an example. So find let f of x be equal to 2x over x plus 5. Find f inverse. Sketch the graph and find the domain and range of f and f inverse. So if you remember kanina, during the first few videos or first video, meron tayong binigay na rational function. Hindi natin nabigay agad yung range. Now, using this technique, pwede na nating malaman yung range ng function na yun. So, first step, or step 0, I'm going to write y is equal to f of x. Now, f of x is equal to 2x over x plus 5. And then, I will switch x and y. I will get x equals 2y over y plus 5. Okay? Yung y dito sa kaliwa, pinalitan ko ng x. And then, lahat ng x dito sa kanan, pinalitan ko ng y. And now, we have to, we need to solve for y. So, ang gagawin ko, I will transpose y plus 5 to the other side. That will give me x times y plus 5 equals 2y. Okay. Medyo kailangan ng algebraic manipulation kapag naghahanap ng f inverse, especially kung rational function yung meron tayo. And then, i-distribute ko yung x. So, meron akong xy plus 5x equals 2y. Sunod naman, gusto kong i-isolate yung y because we're solving for y here. So, lahat ng mga may y, sa kanan, lilipat ko sa kaliwa. So, xy minus 2y. Ito namang expression na walang y, in this case 5x, ililipat ko ngayon sa kanan. So, meron akong negative 5x. So, again, ano yung ginawa ko? Lahat ng mga may y dun sa kanan, nilipat ko sa kaliwa. Kaya nagkaroon tayo ng negative 2y dito. Ito namang 5x na walang y, nilipat ko sa kanan. Kaya meron akong negative 5x dito. Ngayon naman, dito sa xy minus 2y, pwede kong i-factor out yung y. So, factor out natin yung y. So, meron akong y times x minus 2 equals negative 5x. And pwede ko nang i-divide yung both sides ng x minus 2. So, y is equal to negative 5x over x minus 2. Okay. And ito na ngayon yung inverse natin. So, f inverse of x is equal to negative 5x over x minus 2. This is a rational function. Yung original function natin, rational din. So, pwede nating malaman yung domain and range, yung domain nila. So, ano ngayon ang domain ng f? Yung f muna, yung original function natin. So, kailangan lang nating alisin sa set of real numbers yung value ng x na gagawing 0 yung denominator. In this case, x equals negative 5. So, the domain of f is the set of all real numbers except the number negative 5. Now, by the remark I made earlier, yung domain ng function ay siyang range ng kanyang inverse. So, itong r except negative 5, siya ngayon yung range ng f inverse. Ano naman ngayon ang domain ng f inverse? Again, rational function din ito. So, ang tatanggalin lang natin sa set of real numbers ay yung value na gagawing 0 yung denominator. In this case, it's equal to, x equals 2. Kaya ang domain ng f inverse ay yung set of real numbers except the number 2. And then, siya rin ngayon ang range ng f. Sketch natin yung graph. Unahin natin itong f of x. Okay. So, since the number negative 5 is not part of the domain, okay, suppose ito yon 2, 3, 4, 5. This is x equals negative 5. This will be an asymptote of our graph. A vertical asymptote, that is. Okay, so let me draw that as a yellow line. Okay. This is x equals negative 5. And it will be a vertical asymptote of our graph. Okay. Now, yung inverse naman natin, yung x equals 2 naman, yung magiging niyang vertical asymptote. But let's sketch the graph of f inverse later. Okay. Na meron tayong rule for rational functions. Kapag pareho ng degree yung numerator tsaka yung denominator natin, such as in this case, parehong degree 1, kapag kinuha natin yung leading coefficients nila, so yung leading coefficient ng numerator ay 2, yung leading coefficient ng denominator ay 1. Okay. Ano uli yung leading coefficient? Ito yung coefficient ng term na may pinakamalaking exponent ng x. Sa example na to, ang pinakamalaking exponent lang ng x ay 1. So, yung leading coefficient ng numerator natin ay 2. Yung leading coefficient ng denominator ay 1. Kapag dinivide natin sila, 2 divided by 1, ang makukuha natin ay yung horizontal asymptote ng graph natin. So, yung y equals 2 divided by 1, which is 2, ay horizontal asymptote. So, let me draw the horizontal asymptote. Ito. Let me label this as y. Let me use blue. Okay. Y equals 2. Ayan. We're going to use the asymptotes as guides in sketching the graph of this function. Okay. Kailangan lang natin mag-plot ng a few points. Piliin natin yung mga convenient, yung madaling i-compute yung value. So, for example, if x is, ano bang magandang value dito? If x is equal to 1, we will have 2 over 6. So, that's 1/3. Okay. Gusto sana nating iwasan yung mga fractions. Anyway, let's just, well, if x is equal to 0, yeah, that makes more sense. If x is equal to 0, then f of x is just 0. Okay. So we know that on this part, if you notice yung yung vertical at horizontal asymptotes natin, they divide the region into 4. And now, since yung graph natin, meron tayong point dito. So, dito ngayon maglalaro yung sketch ng graph natin. So, let's try -1, -2, -3, -4. Is that a good value? -4. If x is equal to -4, we have 2 times -4, which is -8, divided by -4 plus 5, which is 1. It's actually a good value. So, if x is equal to -4, f of x is equal to -8. So, -4, -8. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Medyo nasa ilalim na part siya. Ayan. I hope na hindi magulo yung itsura ng graph. But we can now connect these 2 points. And then using the asymptotes as guides. Okay. I'm going to do my best to connect the 2 points in such a way na smooth yung itsura ng graph natin. But just to let you know, medyo mahirap mag-drawing gamit ang isang pen tablet. Okay, so ganyan yung itsura ng graph natin. So, dito naman sa part na to, or dito sa part na to, let's look for some test values. So, halimbawa, x is equal to -6. Okay. So, if x is equal to -6, we have -2 times -6. Excuse me, so that's -12. And divided by, maybe let's write it down. F of -6 is equal to 2 times -6 over -6 plus 5. You will get -12 divided by 1, divided by -1, which is +12. So kung -6, +12, I'm just going to estimate the location of +12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Dito sa may bandang taas. And then What would be a good value? F of negative 10. F of negative 10. Okay. So 2 times negative 10 divided by negative 10 plus 5. Okay. So 2 times negative 10 is negative 20, and negative 10 plus 5 is negative 5. So we get 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ito yung negative 10. And then 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's around here. Ayan. So, pwede na natin i-connect tong dalawang points na to. And this is now the graph that we get. So, medyo pagpasensyahan nyo na since maliit itong writing area natin. Medyo magulo. But let's verify the graph that we made using Desmos. And if you're familiar with Desmos, this is a website where you can sketch the graph of a function. But I have a little trivia about Desmos. So even if online siya, pwede nyo siyang magamit online. All you have to do is to save the actual website. So save, Control S, and then it will let you download the page. And then pag na-download nyo na yung mismong page, pwede nyo siyang gamitin offline. Yeah. So ano nga uli yung function natin? It's 2x over x plus 5. So 2x divided by x plus 5. Yeah. So that looks about right. Medyo i-zoom in natin. So that's the graph. Tanggalin ko yung grid. Ayan. And this is our graph. Yeah. Medyo magkaiba lang yung scale, kaya nagkaiba ng slide. Okay. Now try to sketch the graph of f inverse equals negative 5x over x minus 2, and you can use Desmos to verify your sketch. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're only sketching anyway. Ang mahalaga lang, dapat yung general shape ng graph natin ay tama, and then yung mga asymptotes natin ay tama din. So, sketch natin yung graph ng negative 5x over x minus 2. Negative 5x over x minus 2. Okay. So, this is now the graph of the inverse. So, itong green, ito yung graph ng function. Itong purple, ito yung graph ng inverse. Now, do you notice something about the graph of a function and the graph of its inverse? So, right, they are actually mirror images of each other. Pero ano yung line of symmetry natin? The line of symmetry is the line y equals x. So, drawing ko dito yung line na y equals x, it's just the diagonal line. Na itong black diagonal line. So, the graph of a function is the mirror image of the graph of its inverse with respect to the diagonal line y equals x. Okay. So, kung alam niyo yung graph ng function, pwede nyo i-graph yung inverse niya. Although medyo tricky siya gawin manually. But if you can use the fact na yung graph ng inverse at yung graph ng function ay symmetric with respect to the line y equals x. Okay. So, ang mangyayari din, yung mga horizontal asymptote ng function, siya yung magiging vertical asymptote ng inverse. And then, yung vertical asymptote ng function, siya yung magiging vertical asymptote ng inverse. So, nag-flip din yung mga asymptotes nila. Horizontal asymptotes become vertical asymptotes become horizontal asymptotes. Okay. Anyway, so much for that example. Okay. Let's look at another one. F of x equals x squared plus x, where x is greater than or equal to 5. Find f inverse and sketch the graph and find the domain and range of f and f inverse. Okay. Quadratic function itong f natin. Pero meron tayong restriction, okay, na x is greater than 1. So, actually, 1 to 1 ito. Okay. And we can verify that by sketching the graph. So, sketch natin yung graph. So, meron tayong restriction sa x. X is greater than or equal to 1. So, ang makukuha natin, hindi yung buong parabola, portion lang nung parabola. Okay. So, alam naman na natin kung paano mag-sketch ng parabola. Maybe we can start with that. Or if you want, you can get the inverse right away. Okay. So, nasaan ang vertex ng parabola natin? It will be at negative b over 2a, f of negative b over 2a. So, ano yung negative b over 2a? It's negative b here is equal to 1. And then, 2a is also is equal to 2. 2 times 1. So, we have f of negative 1 half. Okay. Now, yung x natin ay restricted sa x greater than or equal to 1. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at this, yung vertex natin hindi siya part ng graph. Okay. So, ang gagawin natin, let's just pick 2 points and then connect them. So, hindi natin magagamit itong vertex na to. Let's choose the smallest value of x, which is 1. If x is equal to 1, then y is equal to, or rather f of x is equal to 1 squared plus 1, which is equal to 2. So, f of 1 is equal to 2. So, 1 and then 2. 1, 2. Ito yun. If f is equal to 2, meron tayong 2 squared plus 2. So, that's 4 plus 2, which is 6. So, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yan. Yan lang yung kailangan natin. And I will just connect the 2. Medyo steep itong parabola natin. But try to draw this portion of the parabola na merong counting curve para hindi siya mukhang straight line. Okay. Medyo bumabalik ko itong parabola ko. And that's because of the pen tablet that I am using. Oops, ayaw. Okay. Medyo may bend siya dito. Pero wala to dapat. Medyo mahirap lang mag-drawing using my pen tablet. Ngayon, alam na natin actually immediately, well, yung domain naman ng function natin ay given. The domain of f is the set of all x where x is greater than or equal to 1. So, equal siya sa 1, positive infinity. We are including 1 here. And then from the graph, we have the range. So, yung pinakamaliit na value is 2. And then, lalaki siya ng lalaki since tataas ng tataas itong graph natin. So, yung range natin ay 2, positive infinity. Now, even though we don't know the domain and range of, even if we don't know the f inverse yet, from the remark I made earlier, yung domain ng f is equal to the range of f inverse. Yung range ng f naman is equal to the domain of f inverse. I also made the remark earlier na yung graph nito is yung graph ng F inverse will be the mirror image with respect to the line y equals x. So let's do that. I'm going to try to draw the diagonal line. Okay. This is the line y equals x. And we're just going to reflect this curve to the other side para makuha natin yung inverse. So, itong point na 1, 2, okay, itong point na to, ang coordinates niya ay 1, 2. Ito, 1, 2. Ito naman, 2, 6. Okay. Kapag nireflect natin sa line na y equals x, babaliktad lang yung mga coordinates. So, itong 1, 2 magiging 2, 1. Ito siya. Ito na, ba't nawala? Something is happening with my computer. So again, itong 1, 2 magiging 2, 1. Itong 2, 6 magiging 6, 2. So dito yung 2, 1. Yung 6, 2 naman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 2. Ayan. And then, ito na ngayon yung graph ng inverse. Ito na naman tayo, yung problema with drawing with a pen tablet. Masyadong madulas ang surface. Ayan. There. So that's the graph of the inverse of the function. Ngayon, hindi natin alam kung ano yung formula for the inverse. Yun yung gagawin natin. That's the first instruction, pero yun yung gagawin natin last. Anyway, we will accomplish everything being asked by this problem, regardless of the order that we followed the instructions. Okay. So, I'm going to write y is equal to f of x, which is x squared plus x. Ano nga ulit yung step 1 natin? Switch x and y. So, meron akong x is equal to y squared plus y. Now, we need to solve for y. And medyo weird itong equation natin. Meron tayong x sa kaliwa. Meron tayong quadratic function in y dito sa kanan. Okay. So, ito yung trick dyan. I'm going to transpose x to the other side. So, meron akong 0 is equal to y squared plus y minus x. Kung medyo awkward na nasa kanan itong expression natin, pwede nyo namang isulat na y squared plus y minus x equals 0. Ito ngayon yung tatrabahuin nating expression. Okay. Now, this is actually a quadratic equation. Quadratic in y. And then we can use the quadratic formula. What is the quadratic formula again? Isusulat ko yung usual version ng quadratic formula. If you have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Yan yung quadratic formula na familiar tayo from high school. Okay. Now, this quadratic formula is true for any quadratic equation regardless of the variable. So, kung itong x dito, papalitan ko ng y. Gagawin ko siyang ay squared plus by plus c equals 0. Then, I will have y equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay? Ito yung meron tayo. That's exactly it. And we're solving for y. Okay, so using the quadratic formula transformed in this form, we can now find the inverse. So what is negative b here? B here is equal to 1. So negative b is equal to negative 1. Ngayon, we need to choose between plus or minus. Okay. So for now, sulat ko muna yung plus or minus. And then square root of b squared. B is 1, so I have 1 squared or 1. And then minus 4ac. So minus 4 times a, which is 1. And what is c? Ano yung c dito? Ito yung term na c, yun yung term na walang y. And dito sa equation natin, that is exactly negative x. Siya yung c natin. So negative x divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1. So simplify natin, negative 1 plus or minus square root of 1 plus 4x over 2. Now, ito hindi to equation ng isang function dahil dun sa plus or minus. Pero alam na natin yung graph ng inverse. What do you observe here? Itong graph natin nasa taas ng x-axis. So, yung value ng y dito, positive lang. So, between the expression na plus yung nasa gitna at minus yung nasa gitna, alin yung magpo-produce nitong graph natin? Well, obviously, it's the plus 1. I mean, the one with the plus. So, we're going to pick this. And our inverse now is equal to negative 1 plus square root of 1 plus 4x over 2. Ngayon, balik tayong Desmos. Check natin yung graph natin. Okay. So, yung function natin ay x squared plus x. So, parabola siya. Yan. Pero yung graph natin, hindi naman graph ng parabola. Meron tayong restriction na yung x natin greater than or equal to 1. Okay. So, ito yung way to restrict your function in Desmos. So, meron tayong restriction on x. So, ilalagay ko ngayon itong right-hand side ng equation ko inside parenthesis. And then, lalagyan ko ng condition sa harap. So, x is greater than or equal to, and then colon. Okay. So, again, x is greater than or equal to 1. Ayan. So, again, the condition, colon, the expression. Okay. So, ito na ngayon yung graph ng function. Yan yung na-sketch natin. It looks close enough. Okay. And then, sketch naman natin yung graph nung inverse. I-type muna natin yung buong expression. So, negative 1 plus square root of 1 plus 4x over 2. Okay, so negative 1 plus square root, you can just type sqrt and then it will give you the square root function. 1 plus 4x. 1 plus 4x. Then, I want to put everything, want to divide everything by 2. So, ipapasok ko sa parenthesis and then divided by 2. Ayan. So, obviously, sobra yung portion na nakuha natin. So, kailangan nating maglagay ng restriction. So, paano maglagay ng restriction? Enclose the expression inside parenthesis. Ayaw na. Ayun. And then, dun sa unahan, ilagay natin yung condition. Pero ano yung condition natin sa x? Yung x natin dito ay greater than or equal to 2. So, ilagay natin x is greater than or equal to 2. X is greater than or equal to 2. And there. It looks close enough to the one that we drew earlier. Okay. And then, andito pa rin yung line natin, tong black line, which is the line y equals x. And as you can see, mirror image nga sila.